You bought the four-season tent. You bought the inflatable pad rated to 0 degrees. You bought the stove that boils water in 90 seconds. And you still woke up at 3 in the morning with your hips aching and your feet like ice blocks, wondering how anybody survived out here before any of that existed. The answer is that they survived better than you did last night, with none of it. My grandfather used to say the ground has been teaching people how to sleep on it for longer than any tent company has been in business. Today I'm handing you 20 of the skills that knowledge is built on, and I want you to notice something by the end. Not one of them requires a receipt. I'm Thomas Yazzie. I grew up Dene, in the high desert country of the Southwest, raised mostly by my grandfather, on land that goes from Red Rock Canyon up into Piñon and Ponderosa Pine. He didn't call any of this survivalism. He called it knowing where you are. That's what I want to pass on to you today. 20 pieces of it, plain and usable, the kind of thing that used to just get handed down at a fire instead of sold in a store. Some of what follows works anywhere you'll ever camp. Some of it comes straight out of dry country, because that's the ground I know best, and it'll matter to you the day you find yourself somewhere water isn't easy to come by. Skill 1. Camp on the bench, not the bottom. Cold air sinks the same way water runs downhill, and it pools in valley floors and creek bottoms overnight. A shelf partway up a slope sits above that pool and below the ridgetop wind. That middle ground is where the old camps sat, and it's often 10 degrees warmer than the meadow that looks so inviting at dusk. Skill 2. Keep real distance from water. A creek bank feels like the obvious spot, but it's the dampest, buggiest ground around, and it's the road every animal in the area uses after dark. Set your camp well back, and you sleep drier and quieter. Skill 3. Build your fire small and sit close to it. Heat drops off fast with distance. A knee-high fire you sit right up against warms you better than a bonfire 10 feet away, and it costs a fraction of the wood. Skill 4. Stack a low wall behind the fire, green logs or flat stones, an arm's length back. It bounces heat forward instead of letting it walk off into the dark, and it blocks the wind so your fire burns steady instead of gulping wood. Skill 5. Never pull stones from a creek bed for your fire ring. Wet stone holds water inside it, and a hot fire turns that water to steam with nowhere to go. It can blow apart with real force, sometimes an hour after you built the fire. Dry stone from high, sunny ground only. Skill 6. In wet weather, look up, not down. Wood lying on the ground soaks up moisture from the soil underneath it. Wood that died standing, still upright in the brush, sheds rain and stays dry inside. Snap a twig off a standing dead branch. If it cracks clean, you're in business. Skill 7. Gather everything before you strike a single match. Sort your tinder, your pencil-thick sticks, and your wrist-thick wood into 3 piles. Then double what you think you need, because what looks like plenty in daylight is usually half of what a cold night will actually ask for. Most fires die because the builder wandered off looking for the next stick instead of having it ready, gets one flame going, and by the time he's back with more wood, it's already starved out. Skill 8. Bank your coals before bed. Rake them into a tight pile and cover them with 2 or 3 inches of the ash already sitting in your fire ring. It smothers the flame, but holds the heat, and in the morning you rake it open to find live coals waiting, instead of starting from nothing in the cold. Skill 9. Carry fire instead of restarting it. A chunk of punky rotted wood, or the hard fungus that grows on dead trees, holds a coal and smolders for hours if you wrap it loosely in bark or damp moss. Open it at the next camp, tip the coal into dry tinder, and blow it back to flame. Skill 10. Boil water with stones if you have no pot. Heat fist-sized dry stones in the fire, then drop them one at a time into a water-filled basket or hide-lined pit with a pair of green stick tongs. 3 or 4 hot stones will bring a gallon to a rolling boil faster than you'd expect. Skill 11. If the only water around is cloudy, dig instead of dipping. A hole a few feet back from a muddy pond, dug down to where water seeps in through the soil, filters out a surprising amount on its own. Bail it out cloudy a couple of times, let it refill, and it settles clearer. Boil it after, always. Skill 12. In dry desert country, learn where water actually hides. A barrel cactus, cut and mashed carefully, holds a bitter but drinkable pulp in an emergency. Early morning dew collected off grass or brush with a cloth tied around your shins, wrung out into a cup, is slow but real water. Neither replaces a known source, but both have kept people alive between them. Skill 13. Remember your own body puts out roughly 100 watts of heat all night, whether you use it or waste it. A shelter only works if it's small enough for that heat to actually fill. Build a lean-to or debris hut just barely bigger than your body, not a cavern. Skill 14. Pile insulation on that shelter 2 feet deep. Dry leaves, grass, pine needles, more than looks necessary because it always packs down. That thickness traps still air, and still air is what actually keeps you warm, not the material itself. Skill 15. Get off the bare ground before you get off anything else. A bed of evergreen boughs or a thick pile of dry leaves, laid a foot deep so it compresses to about 4 inches under you, puts a cushion of trapped air between your body and the cold earth. This alone solves most of what people blame on a bad sleeping bag. Skill 16. Never let yourself sweat hard in cold weather. Wet clothing stops insulating and pulls heat out of you as it dries. Move at a pace you could hold all day. Vent a layer before you warm up rather than after. And take your coat off before hard work instead of during it. Skill 17. Keep your cooking and your sleeping separated by real distance, especially anywhere with bears. Food smell rides into your bedding and your hair faster than you'd think. Cook, eat, and store food well away from where you actually lie down, and don't sleep in the shirt you cooked in. Skill 18. Learn one plant that feeds you almost anywhere you camp. In yucca country, the young flower stalks can be roasted, the fruit pods eaten, and the tough leaf fibers twisted into cord strong enough for real use. A single plant that hands you food and equipment at the same time is worth knowing better than a dozen you'll never identify under pressure. Skill 19. Dry meat instead of trying to keep it cold. Sliced thin against the grain and hung over low heat and moving air, not direct flame, meat turns brittle and snaps instead of bends within a day or two. That's jerky, and it keeps for months without any ice at all. Skill 20. And this is the one that actually explains why you were cold in that expensive gear to begin with. Still air is a poor conductor, which is exactly why down and wool and dry leaves work as insulation in the first place. But the ground under you isn't still air. It's a patient, bottomless thief, and pressing your warm body flat against cold earth pulls heat out of you far faster than the night air above ever could, hour after hour, without ever running out. On top of that, your own weight crushes whatever padding you're lying on, so the insulation under your back is doing almost nothing by midnight, no matter what it's rated for. Before you sleep, dig a shallow trench the length of your body, in sandy or plain soil, never in deep leaf duff or peat, because that kind of ground can hold a hidden smolder. Burn a hardwood fire down the length of that trench for about an hour, until it collapses into a bed of coals. Spread those coals even, then bury them under 4 inches of packed dirt, firm down with your foot, until nothing is showing through. Test it the old way. Lay your bare palm flat on the dirt and count to 10. If you can hold it there, warm like fresh bread, you're ready. Too hot to keep your hand down, add another 2 inches and give it a few more minutes. Lay your bed on top of that and lie down on ground that's become a low, steady hearthstone, feeding warmth up into you slowly until morning. You're not fighting the cold night air anymore. You're lying on ground that's quietly warming you from underneath while you sleep. That's the list. 20 pieces of knowledge that never needed a battery, never broke a zipper, and never once ran out of fuel in the middle of the night, because the knowledge itself was the fuel. My grandfather carried all of this in his head, the same way his father did, and none of it was ever written down where I grew up. It just got handed to whoever was paying attention around the fire, one trip at a time, usually without anybody announcing that a lesson was happening at all. Gear is fine. I'm not telling you to leave the tent at home, but gear runs out on you eventually. Batteries die and zippers jam at the worst possible hour, and knowledge doesn't work that way. It gets better the more you use it. It weighs nothing in your pack, and it costs nothing to carry once you actually have it. Tell me down below where your people are from, and if you've got a skill in your own family that got passed down around a fire instead of bought at a store, I want to hear it. I read every one of these comments, and more than a few of them have turned into the next thing I film. Until next time, walk easy out there, and I'll see you at the next fire.